Hey there! Welcome back to Section 3 of Developing Your First Canvas, UI Interaction. In this section, we're going to look at adding interaction to our main menu, triggering functions with the event system, UI raycasting and blocking raycasts, and navigation settings. In our first video, navigating between menus, we're going to be swapping menus from our main menu to our options menu, triggering events with the event system so that we can turn on and off different menus, and setting the first selected item in a menu. So let's go into Unity. In our Scenes folder, under Section 3, UI Interaction, we have Section 3 _ Start Scene, which is everything we had at the end of our last section on making a main menu. With 4 menu items, an options menu under the main canvas, a new game screen, and a load menu. In this video, we're going to be setting this up so that when you click on New Video, it will show the new game screen and hide the main menu. When you click Options, it will do the same for the Options menu. And when you click Quit or Continue, it won't do anything, but will trigger a function on a script, debug a message to the console, so that we know it's set up correctly. So the way we're going to do this is by using Unity's event system, which we've looked at briefly before, and used a little bit in previous sections so far. The event system lets you call functions from multiple scripts or components from a single interaction on a UI element. So for example, when we click the New Game button here, any events we add to the onClick event of the button component will be called in the order they are created here, and we can add multiple events to be triggered. You can set these to run in the editor, or only while the game is running, or switch them off for debugging purposes. When you create an event in this list, you can drag a target object to this field and select a function from any of its scripts or components from this drop-down field. For example, we could set the GameObject setActive function to true to turn on this GameObject. For now, what we want to do is set the main menu to inactive and the new game screen to active when the new game button, or the first in our 4 buttons, is clicked. So go to the first menu item's button component in the inspector, add a new event by clicking the plus sign here, drag in the new game screen object, and choosing GameObject setActive from the drop-down menu, set the Boolean checkbox to true. We can do the same thing with the main menu itself and set the checkbox to false. If we run this and press New Game, our menu will hide and our new game screen will show. We can enter a character name and click Start Game, which doesn't do anything at the moment, but we can set that up later if we want. And now if we exit play mode, we can start hooking up the other button's functionality. For the Continue button, we're going to trigger a function on a script that we will write. We can add a script to the main menu object, call it Menu Controller, go back to the Assets folder where the script was created and wait for it to be added to the Visual Studio project. You can tell it's been added when the script component has faded out in the inspector window here. Then drag it into the scripts folder to keep things organized as we go, and open it in Visual Studio. On this script, I'm going to delete the default start and update functions because we're not using them, and make our own public function called Continue Game, which we're not going to add any functionality to. We'll just log out a message to the console so that we can see our function works. Switch back into Unity, and on our second menu item, create an event on the button component. Drag the main menu object onto it, and select Menu Controller Continue Game from the drop-down menu. Now, when we play the game and click on Continue, we can see our message being logged out at the bottom of the screen here. So that's how to trigger your functions from the event system. This is a very useful and simple way to add functionality to buttons. If we wanted to call a function to clear the main menu every time that any of these buttons were clicked, we can add that as a function for each of them before calling their own functionality. On the Options button, we're going to go into our menu controller and make a new function, call it Show Options Menu. And the reason that we're doing this is to show how we do the same functionality we're making with the new game screen, but through scripting, by calling a singular function on this script. I'm actually going to set the menu controller to be a component on the top level canvas, just so that it isn't deactivated when we deactivate our main menu object, which we'll remove it from as well, so that we only have one menu controller in our scene. And we're going to rename the canvas to Menus. Drag the menus game object onto the continue button targeted object field to reset that because it lost a reference to the script when we changed it. On the options button, we're going to add the menus object and call the show options function that we've made. If it doesn't show up, make sure that the script is saved and that the function is published. We're also going to have a function in our script to hide the main menu, one to show the main menu, and we're going to need references to the main menu, load menu, and options menu. Inside the hide main menu function, we'll get our main menu object and call setActive set to false. Copy that into the show main menu function and set it to true. In show options menu, we're going to hide the main menu and then set options menu to true. I'm going to make a corresponding hide options menu, which sets the options menu to false and shows the menu. So we can hook this up back in Unity. When we click the options button, it should run the show options menu function. We can change the new game button to call our hide main menu function. And just so that we have functionality for each of our buttons, I'm going to add another function to our script called quitGame, which will run the code to exit our application when it's called. Now this won't work in the Unity editor because that has its own function to exit play mode, but it should work when you build your game. Back in Unity, we can add an event to our quit button. Drag in the menus object and set the function to call menu controller quitGame. On the new game button, I set the wrong event up, so change the second event to target the new game screen object and set it to active. Before any of this works, we have to set up our references on the menu controller script. So drag in the main menu, options menu, and load menu. And we have to create another one for our new game screen if we want to target that. We're looking at a few different ways that we can target scripts, so we're not going to do it right now. If you want to use one single way to call all your functionality, you can do that. To add a bit more functionality, we can show our options menu and add an event to the Save Options button to call the Hide Options menu function on our menu controller script, so we can navigate back from that menu. We're not implementing any functionality to store the values of the options menu, but you can easily add in another function here when this button is pressed that would save them or load them from the player prefs file, or however you want to implement that for your game. If we enter play mode and click between Save Options and the Options menu, we can go back and forth between these two menus by pressing the two buttons. We can click the New Game button to show that menu, and you could also add another button to go back if you wanted to. And that's essentially how to use the event system to trigger functions on scripts, and more simply by targeting objects. One last thing we're going to look at is setting the first object in a menu to be selected when the menu loads. On the event system, we don't have any items selected when we enter play mode, so we can't navigate through them using the arrow keys on the keyboard. And if we click one to enter focus, it will trigger the functionality, so we can't do that. To set this up, we simply have to set a field on the event system object that gets created when we make a UI canvas. If we drag in the first menu item to the first selected field and press play, we can press up and down on the keypad to navigate using the keyboard and the enter key to press a button. It's a small touch, but it adds a lot to the usability of our game. We can also set the first item to be selected in our options menu when we click the options button. If we go to our save button on our options menu, add a new event and drag the event system object onto this event, we can call the function setSelectedGameObject and pass in the UI item that we want to be selected when we go back to the main menu. In this case, the options menu. So when we go into play mode and go from the options menu back to the main menu, the options button will already be active. This gives us the ability to direct where the user can navigate between our menus from the event system, which is essential when you're making a good UI and a good user experience. That's the end of this video. If you want to take this further, you could add in a back button for the new game screen, add the functionality for showing or hiding the load menu, create functions for each of the menus to show and hide them, and at the moment all we're doing in the hide and show functions is setting their game objects to set active or inactive, but in a later section we're going to be adding animations that will be triggered from these functions.